understand what you're looking for. Obviously, you sort of planted the flag on that audit, raising the question. We know they've been through all of the files at least once looking for Donald Trump's name. That was reported by multiple news organizations. Susie Wiles confirms in a series of 11 on-the-record interviews that Trump is in the files. But I wonder if you have evidence that things were tampered with or just concerns that they could be that led to that call for the audit.
Well, when I issued that letter, it was concerns that they wouldn't be forthcoming in what they were going to provide to the American people. And those fears have become all too realized today with this completely unlawful withholding of information from the Justice Department. It is a violation of the law. And I think, frankly, the remedies now have to be stronger than what I earlier proposed. I think we ought to bring Pam Bondi before the Senate Judiciary Committee, demand answers as to why the department has violated the law. It's not just that they had 30 days to go through this to do the production. They've had the whole year to do it. They promised to release the files. They haven't done it. They could have been completely ready for this moment, and they're not. Or they're just simply willfully withholding the materials. I think the Judiciary Committee should do its real oversight and bring her in and demand answers. I also think we need an Inspector General's investigation of what they've done and to ride shotgun on this to make sure that they're producing everything they're required to. We should consider other remedies, including litigation if necessary, but there needs to be accountability here.
What did you think they would do? I mean, are you at all surprised that they've been less than forthcoming?
I'm not surprised that they have withheld, but I am surprised that it is to this scale. What I imagine would happen is they would make a production today, and then we would have to fight to find out what was redacted and what wasn't. The statute requires them to make a report to Congress within 15 days about anything that withheld and what they produced. I think we should also demand that right now, because what Todd Blanche is saying is, we've given you some now, we'll give you some later, we may give you some after that. If they read the statute as saying that they can string this out indefinitely and wait giving us that cataloging of what they produced and what they haven't, we may never find the answer to that question. So at a minimum, the Justice Department needs to produce that summary, that log right now. What have they produced now? What have they withheld? And why have they withheld it? And those answers need to be provided ASAP.
If you put back sort of your investigator-prosecutor hat on, Pam Bondi went on Fox News and told the host of a program there that the list is sitting on her desk. She does an about face before releasing any list. Kash Patel went on Joe Rogan and talked about 300 gigabytes of data, videotapes and pictures and whatnot. He testified before Congress that there's nothing, that basically Epstein didn't traffic any women to anyone. And we know from the survivors that that is a lie. What do you think they are all butting up? What do you think they see that turns Bondi and Patel into liars on the specific issue of the Epstein files, something they've talked about for years?
Well, the only one they really serve is Donald Trump. So they must see something in those files that they don't want to share with the American people. Now, it may not be evidence of criminality on Trump's behalf, but it may be evidence that that embarrasses the president, reflects poorly on the president. And of course, written into that legislation is very explicit prohibition on withholding anything for reasons of reputational harm to any elected official. So that is not a legal basis for them to withhold information. But I wouldn't be surprised if, as a practical matter, they have promised the president they won't release anything that makes him look bad, even if it comes at the cost of the victims getting the full information. And that's just not going to cut it. If we're going to do serious oversight, frankly, unlike what we've done so far, you know, Bondi needs to come in and actually answer questions, not just use her time to try to insult or attack members of the committee. But we need this on a bipartisan basis. The legislation passed on a bipartisan basis. Both parties ought to insist on answers. And if not, I think the public needs to hold them accountable for this continuing cover-up.
Danielle Bansky, one of the survivors, talked about the manipulation from Epstein and his allies that continues now that he's, even though he's dead. And I wonder, as the issue becomes more front of mind for a larger swath of Americans, 81% of Americans think Donald Trump is covering something up in the Epstein files. Those numbers, I'm sure, will swell as news reports cover what is and is not in today's release. Would you consider legislation to protect the survivors who have spoken out?
Oh, absolutely. I mean, they have endured enough as it is, and I know many survivors have reported that they've experienced threats and terrible communications that they've received. No one should go through that additional trauma. But I agree, the manipulation continues. It seems to continue even beyond the grave. It continues in the form of this kind of slow walking of information and release of information. It was, I think, very much a feature of the Justice Department at Bondi announcing that they're going to investigate at the president's demand Democrats who are in the Epstein files. That's another manipulation. It doesn't matter whether Democrats or Republicans or independents or nonpartisan people are implicated in these files. They should all that information should come out. It's, I think, hard to imagine the victims getting the kind of justice they deserve unless that happens. And I can only imagine how vexing it is for the victims to see this kind of manipulation continue.
Julie K. Brown of the Miami Herald, who's also on our panel today for our coverage, has made the point that the victims are so used to being stonewalled and not receiving transparency or accountability that they may not be surprised, although I'm sure they'll be greatly disappointed that their trauma continues. Are you at all surprised by the lack of production today?
I'm surprised by the magnitude of it. I'm not surprised that they're withholding information. Part of this is a consequence, I think, frankly, of Chief Justice Roberts giving the president absolute immunity when it comes to his instructions to the Justice Department. So he can pretty much order them to do what he wants and knows that he will never be held at least criminally liable. So I'm not surprised that they're withholding. I am surprised at the magnitude of it, the audacity of it, the plain statement by Blanche that they're withholding hundreds of thousands of documents. Yeah. And indeed, that might be just the tip of the iceberg. So yes, that does surprise me. It's a kind of in-your-face, we will ignore the law as we choose, we will go at our own pace, whether we provide things at all will be up to us. It's a kind of arrogance, a kind of drunkenness with power that believes you can ignore the law without any peril.
When you're president, they let you do it. Senator Adam Schiff, thank you for joining our coverage. I want to bring into our coverage.
Okay, so the Department of Justice is in full meltdown mode right now. And I mean absolutely catastrophic meltdown. We're watching what might be one of the most brazen acts of obstruction of justice in modern American history unfold in real time, and it's happening right out in the open. Bondi, Trump's attorney general, just got caught red-handed deleting evidence from social media. Evidence that directly relates to an ongoing federal matter involving the Epstein. And this isn't some minor slip-up or anal post that got. This is deliberate destruction of evidence. And it's happening while she's simultaneously violating a law that Donald Trump himself signed. Let me say that again. The Attorney General of the United States is actively breaking a law boss signed and doing it openly, brazenly, as if the rules simply don't apply to her or anyone in Trump's inner circle. Now, before we get into the absolute disaster that's unfolding at the Department of Justice, I need to talk to you about something important. You can't really trust mainstream media anymore. They're either too scared to cover stories like this properly, or they're deliberately running interference for powerful people. That's exactly why we built this channel. Bring you real stories, real context, absolutely no corporate spin. You want to stay ahead of the headlines and understand what's really happening behind closed doors in Washington. Make sure you subscribe to the channel. Bring the news straight to you, breaking down the stories that connecting the dots that must hit the subscribe button below. If you want to support this work, part of a community that truly cares, this is your moment. Subscribe, hit that notification bell, and drop a comment letting me know what you think about this app. Let's get back to the video. Here's what happened. The timeline on this is absolutely damning. It shows you everything you need to know about how Trump's Department of Justice operated. Donald Trump signed a law passed by Congress with bipartisan support, requiring the full release of all Jeffrey Epstein-related files by a specific date. This wasn't a suggestion. This wasn't a guideline. This was federal law with a clear deadline. The law explicitly states that all unclassified information, all documents, all photos, all emails, all videos related to the must be released to the public. No exceptions for political convenience, no carve-outs for embarrassing, no special protections for powerful people who might. The law is crystal clear. Everything unclassified gets released. Here's the problem. That deadline came and went. What did we get from Bondi's Department of Justice? Nothing. Well, not nothing exactly. Got excuses, got delayed. We got heavily redacted documents with higher pages black. Supposedly for national security reasons nobody can explain. We got a whole lot of talk about how the process is complicated, how they're being thorough, and but what we didn't get is compliance with the law. And keep in mind, this isn't some new development that caught them by surprise. This law was passed months ago. The Department of Justice has literally months to prepare for this release. They've had an entire year, actually, because the Epstein case federal custody since death back in Ghislaine Maxwell's conviction added more materials. So Pam Bondi and her team have had more than enough time to go through these files, organize them, separate classified from unclassified, to prepare for the release that the law mandates. But instead of doing their jobs, instead of following the law, they've been stalling. Worse than stalling, they've been actively working to cover things up. This is where things start to get really damaging because we're not just talking about bureaucratic creative incompetence. We're talking about deliberate obstruction. We can prove it. Last night, Pam Bondi posted something on social media. Clearly didn't mean to posted photos. In those photos, you clearly see Donald Trump with Jeffrey Epstein. We've all seen photos of Trump and Epstein together before. There's that famous footage of them at Mar-a-Lago, and then there are party photos from New York Society events. There's documented evidence that they ran in the same circles for years. Trump claims he cut ties. But these particular photos that Bondi posted, they appear to be part of the unreleased Epstein. They're photos that the public hasn't seen before. Photos that were supposed to remain under wraps while the Department of Justice figures out how to release them without embarrassing the president. Here's where it gets absolutely within hours of posting these photos. Bondi deleted them. Not just one photo, not just a single post. It might have been an honest mistake. He went through and systematically deleted every trace of those images from social media accounts. He didn't offer any explanation, didn't acknowledge that she'd posted them in the first place, didn't say, "Oops, an accident. Those photos are part of an ongoing review." Just quietly deleted them. Hope nobody noticed. Of course, people noticed. This is the internet. Nothing ever really gets. Screenshots were taken. Archives were within minutes of Bondi hitting the delete button. Those photos were circulating. News organizations grabbed them. Researchers archived them. Congressional Democrats immediately started asking questions about why the Attorney General was posting and then deleting evidence. Let's talk about what this is. It's so much bigger than just social media. First, understand that deletion of evidence for federal case, obstruction of justice, plain and simple. You or I were under investigation, or if we had custody of materials related to federal case, started deleting documents or photos, we'd be charged immediately. There wouldn't be any debate about it. Wouldn't be any, well, let's see if it was intentional, hand-wringing. We'd be facing federal charge obstruction, and depending on the severity, we could be looking at serious prison time. But Pam Bondi isn't. She's the Attorney General, which means she's supposed to be the person who ensures that justice is fairly. Laws are enforced equally, that nobody, no matter how powerful, special treat. Instead, she's using her position to run interference for She's doing it in the most obvious, legally indefensible way. Second, this isn't happening in isolation. This is part of a broader pattern of obstruction that's been going on for months. Remember, Susie Wiles, Trump's chief of staff, already confirmed in a series of interviews Trump's name appears in the Epstein file. Multiple news organizations reported months ago the Department of Justice had been through the entire, looking specifically for references so they know what's in there. They've already identified the materials that met Trump. Materials that show Trump with Epstein, materials that might be politically damaging or legally problematic for the president. Instead of releasing those materials as the law requires, they've been sitting on them. They've been slow-walking the process, claiming they're being careful about protecting victim identities, security information. But here's the thing. Protecting victims and protecting national security are legitimate concerns. There are legitimate redactions that should be made. But you don't need months and months to figure out how to redact victim names from documents. You don't need an entire genuinely classified materials from basic case trafficking operations. What you do need time for, apparently, figuring out how to release these files in a way that minimizes political damage to Donald Trump. And that's exactly what Pam Bondi has been. She's been working with Trump's legal team. She's been coordinating with the White House. She's been doing everything in her power, damaging material hidden from public. Third, and this is where congressional Democrats are starting to mobilize, Pam Bondi's actions constitute a clear violation of federal law. They're demanding accountability. Adam Schiff, who serves on the Senate Judiciary Committee, was on television immediately after the story broke. Didn't mince words. He said that when he initially sent a letter to the Department of Justice raising concerns about the file release, he was worried they wouldn't be forthcoming with materials. Now, as those fears have been completely realized, the Department of Justice is unlawfully withholding information. They're in violation of the law. The remedies need to be stronger than just sending letters and making requests for compliance. Schiff is calling for Pam Bondi to be called before the Senate Judiciary can answer questions on oath about why the department is violating the law. He's not alone. Representative Jamie Raskin, who's been one of the most vocal critics of Trump's lawlessness, was on MSNBC last night laying it clear that there's no legitimate excuse for the delay. He pointed out that back in July, the Department of Justice told Congress there was nothing left to see in the Epstein. Then in September, Kash Patel, Trump's FBI director, testified before the House Oversight Committee, claimed they hadn't found any potential evidence of other crimes, which means they'd already been through the entire archive. They've already reviewed everything. They've already looked through all the files and determined there's no new criminal activity to investigate. Why are they withholding public? The only possible expert protecting Donald Trump from protecting him from politically damaging revelation, willing to break the law. It gets worse. As Representative Ro Khanna talking about it, he's working with other Democrats, including some Republicans who are genuinely concerned about the vile article. Thomas Massey, libertarian-leaning Republican who's usually hesitant to go after members, reportedly supportive of holding. The reason is simple. The law is clear. The violation is obvious, and if an attorney general can openly defy federal law without consequences, then the rule of law means nothing. Let's break down what this actually means for the balance of Washington, because this is about so much more than just the Epstein files or embarrassing photos of Trump at parties 30 years ago. This is about whether laws apply to the executive branch, whether the attorney general can use the Justice Department as personal protection racket president, and whether Congress has any real power to force accountability. First, understand that the Attorney General is supposed to be independent. Yes, AG is appointed by the President, serves at the President's pleasure. Once confirmed, AG is supposed to enforce the law impartially. AG isn't the president's personal lawyer. That's what White House counsel is for. AG runs the Department of Justice. It means they're responsible for federal law enforcement, prosecuting federal crimes, or ensuring that justice is administered fairly across the country. Pam Bondi isn't acting like independent attorney general. He's acting like Trump's defense attorney. He's using the full power of the Justice Department to run interference for him. He's withholding evidence that could be politically damaging. He's slow-walking legally mandated release now. She's been caught deleting evidence from her own social media account. This isn't independence. This is corruption, plain and simple. Second, this sets a dangerous precedent for executive power. If an attorney general can openly defy a law that the president signed, they can withhold legally mandated releases because those releases would embarrass the administration. Then what other laws can they? What happens when there's a law requiring disclosure of presidential tax returns, or financial records, or communications with foreign governments? What happens when Congress issues a subpoena for documents and the attorney general simply decides that compliance would be politically inconvenient? The legal scholars I've been talking to are deeply concerned, because once you establish that the attorney general can pick and choose which laws to enforce based on political concessions, you've essentially destroyed the rule of law. You've created a system where the executive branch is above the law, where accountability depends entirely on political obligation, where ordinary citizens are held unstandard. The president and his inner circle operate on a completely different set of third, and this is the part that should worry anyone who cares about institutional stability. Congress is being systematically neutered. Think about it. Congress passed a law, bipartisan law, requiring the release of the files. The president signed that law, making it official federal policy. Now, the attorney general, who works for the executive branch, simply refusing to comply. Congress can hold hearings, they can send letters, they can threaten impeachment, but at the end of the day, the attorney general won't comply and the president won't fire her for non-compliance. What can Congress actually do? This is the constitutional crisis that legal experts have been warning about. Founders designed a system of checks and that each branch of government could train the other. Congress passes executive enforces them, and the judiciary interprets them. That system only works if each branch respects its constitutional role, accepts the limits on its power. When the executive branch decides it can simply ignore laws it finds inconvenient, when the attorney general acts as the president's personal fixer rather than independent law enforcement, the entire system strikes down. And here's what makes this particularly dangerous heading into 2020. The midterm elections are less than 2 years away. Democrats are preparing to make corruption and accountability central themes of their every House seat is up for election. A third of the Senate is on the ballot. And voters are going to be asked to decide whether they want to continue empowering an administration that openly flouts the law. Republicans are already in full panic, by the way. Not all Republicans are. The MAGA diehards will defend Trump no matter what he does, no matter how brazenly corrupt or illegal his actions. But there are moderate Republicans, particularly those in competitive districts, who are watching this disaster unfold and realizing that it could cost them their seat. They know that suburban voters, independent voters, and even some traditionally Republican voters are exhausted by the scandals, the endless corruption, and the complete disregard for legal. The Epstein angle makes this even more toxic, because it's not just about abstract legal principles or institutional theory. Convicted sex traffickers, powerful men who exploited vulnerable young women, about an administration that seems more interested in protecting those powerful men, delivering justice for victims. Not a winning message. Republican strategists know it. Now let's talk about what this means for Bondi personally, because her legal exposure here. Obstruction of justice is a federal crime. Destroying evidence for a federal case is a federal crime. Doing both of those things while serving as Attorney General, while being responsible for holding federal law, is an aggravating factor that rhymes even. Democrats in Congress are making it very clear that they view Bondi as a criminal. They're promising to pursue charges once she's out of office. Representative Ro Khanna said explicitly that Bondi will be prosecuted, that she should be held accountable for breaking the law, and that anyone working under her who follows illegal orders will also be held accountable. That's a warning shot to every career Justice Department employee who's being asked to participate in this cover-up. You delete files, you withhold legally mandated release, you follow Bondi's orders to obstruct justice. You're not going to be protected by claims that you are following orders. Here's the thing about working for Don. Loyalty is a one-way street. Trump expects absolute devotion from his. He expects them to lie for him, to break laws for him, sacrifice their own reputations and landing to protect. But the moment they become a liability, the moment they're no longer useful, he'll throw them under the bus without a. Just ask Michael Cohen, just ask Rudy Giuliani, just ask any of the dozens of Trump associates who've been indicted, convicted, or bankrupted at Trump's dirty work. So if you're a career prosecutor at the Justice Department, you're a civil servant who's being asked to participate in the obstruction scheme, you need to ask yourself a very simple question. When this all falls apart, and it will fall apart, who's going to protect you? Will it be Donald Trump? who's famous for abandoning his allies the moment they become in? Or will it be the judges and juries who will be evaluating whether you knowingly participated in a criminal conspiracy to obstruct justice? The answer should be obvious. Apparently it's not, because people keep following Bondi's order, keep deleting files, keep redacting documents that shouldn't be redacted, they keep slow-walking release dated. Every single one of those paper trail of their own criminal liability. Let's also talk about the international because it's not just domestic politics and midterm elected by this. America's allies are watching this unfold, and they're drawing their own conclusions about whether the United States can be trusted to uphold the rule. If the American Attorney General can openly defy federal law, the President can use the Justice Department personal protection racket. And what does that say about America's commitments to legal norms, treaty obligations, the principles of justice and equality the United States supposedly stands for on the stage? European leaders are already deeply skeptical of Trump's second. They watched his first term with growing alarm, attacked NATO allies, cozied up to authoritarian dictators, and undermined democratic institutions at home and abroad. Now they're watching him install loyalists in key positions. Watching those loyalists break laws to protect him, they're recalculating their assumptions about this. Matters for everything from military alliance, trade agreements, to intelligence. If America's closest allies can't trust that the U.S. government will follow its own laws, how can they trust American commitments on it? How can they share sensitive intelligence with agencies that are corrupted by clearance? How can they negotiate long-term agreements that trill obligations? It's not just allies who are adversaries. Moscow is watching, and American institutions that laws can be ignored with impunity as long as you have enough. That accountability is largely theoretical. When the executive branch, Beijing is watching and drawing the same. Iran is watching. Pyongyang is watching. Every authoritarian regime on the planet is watching American democracy eat itself from the inside. They're using it as propaganda to tell their own citizens that democracy doesn't work, that the rule of law is a myth, and that strongman governance is more stable and reliable. Now, Pam Bondi's team has been trying to distract from all releasing other materials that don't implicate Trump. They put out some photos showing Bill Clinton with young people at a charity event, tried to suggest it was somehow sinister, and hoped the media would run with both sides have Epstein connections narratives. But it's not working, because the photos they released easily debunked. Faces that were blurred weren't Epstein victims. They were children of attendees at a completely legitimate fundraising event. Michael Jackson and Bill Clinton. It was a cheap distraction attempt. It failed. This is the pattern we keep seeing from this, and they're caught doing something corrupt or illegal. Try to change the subject by accusing their opponents of this, even when the accusations are bumpy and projected. He assumes that because he was close friends with Epstein, because there are potentially damaging materials about Epstein files, everyone else must have similar skeletons, and though he directs his attorney general to dig up dirt on his police. When they can't find real dirt, they manufacture fake scandals, innocent photos, hope the media is too lazy or scared to fact-check. Here's what Trump and Bondi don't seem to understand. Not that stupid. The American people can see through these obvious distraction tactics. We can see that Trump is trying to change the subject from own connections to Epstein, false equivalencies. We can see that Bondi is withholding legally mandated damaging to. We can see that this entire cover-up operation is falling apart in real time as more people come forward, more evidence leaks out, more members of Congress demand accountability. Adam Schiff said something really important in his interview. It's worth repeating. The Department of Justice has had a year to prepare for this. They've known the deadline was coming. Had time to go through every document, every photo, every video, email. Had time to make legitimate redactions for victim privacy. They've had time to organize everything and smooth, lawful release federal requirements. Instead, spent that year figuring out how to cover things up. Trump, how to minimize political. Now that the deadline has passed, they're in clear violation of the law. They're making excuses about needing more time, about the process being complicated, about wanting to be thorough and careful. It's complete nonsense. Everyone knows. Jamie Raskin made another crucial point when he talked about Patel told Congress under oath that the FBI had reviewed the Epstein files and found no evidence of additional crimes that needed to be investigated. Now, either Patel was lying to Congress, would itself be a federal crime, or he was telling the truth, in which case, there's absolutely no legitimate reason to withhold the files from public release. If there are no ongoing investigations, there are no new criminal matters checked, then the only reason to withhold materials, political embarrassment. Speaking of Kash Patel, let's talk about the FBI director's role in all of this, because it's another example of how Trump has corrupted key institutions. Patel shouldn't have been anywhere near the Epstein files review. He's Trump's hand-picked FBI director. He's a Trump loyalist who spent years defending the president and attacking Trump's enemy. He has an obvious conflict of interest when it materials that might Trump. Functioning system. Epstein files review have been handled by career prosecutors and investigators, people with no political loyalty to party or any individual, people whose only interest is in following the ever it leads, ensuring that justice is done. Instead, Trump installed Patel specifically to control the FBI, to make sure the Bureau doesn't investigate Trump or his associates, and to use federal law enforcement as a political weapon against Trump's enemies. This is textbook authoritarian behavior. This is what happens in countries where democracy is breaking down. The strongman leader installs loyalists in key positions, particularly in law enforcement judiciary, and those loyalists use their power to protect the leader from accountability while persecuting the leaders. We've seen this pattern play in Hungary, Turkey, Philippines, Russia, Now we're watching it happen. Here's the really terrifying: it's working. Despite everything, despite the obvious corruption and the brazen law-breaking, Trump remains politically powerful. His approval ratings among Republicans are still high. His control over the party is still strong. And his ability to install loyalists in key positions means he can continue to escape accountability, even when he's clearly breaking. There are cracks forming. The deletion of evidence by Bondi, the kind of mistake that can't be spun away, can't be explained away, can't be dismissed as fake news or mainstream media hysteria. She posted evidence, she deleted evidence. There are screenshots proving what she did. It happened while she was violating a federal law requiring redacted evidence. Too obvious, too brazen, too stupid to be defended even by Trump's most loyal supporters. And that's why Democrats and co-energized him. They've been trying to hold Trump accountable for years. They've been investigating his corruption and his lawlessness, but they've repeatedly run into roadblocks. Friendly judges, illicit Republicans, procedural delays, Trump's own shamelessness about lying and obstructing. This time is different, as Bondi has handed them evidence of a crime on a silver platter. He's given them proof that the Attorney General is obstructing justice, done it in such an obvious way that even moderate Republicans are trouble defending her. Now let's talk about Ghislaine Maxwell, as her situation is directly connected. It reveals even more about how corrupt the Justice Department's lead. Maxwell is Epstein's accomplice. She was convicted of sex trafficking, currently serving a prison sentence. But her treatment has been, let's call it, unusual. Shortly after she was subpoenaed by the House Oversight Committee to testify about Epstein's operations and people who were involved, Todd Blanche paid her a visit. Todd Blanche, you don't remember, is Trump's personal criminal defense attorney during the hush money trial documents case, during all of Trump's legal and then Trump appointed Blanche to be the #2 person in the Department of Justice, deputy attorney. So Trump's personal defense lawyer, now the second highest ranking official at the Justice Department. One of his first acts in that role was to go visit Ghislaine Maxwell. Now, you might think the purpose of that visit was to question her other to find out who else was involved in Epstein trafficking to investigate whether there are other crimes that prosecuted. But according to reports, that's not what happened. Instead, Blanche's visit was focused on one thing: finding out what Maxwell would say about Donald. Let that sink in for a moment. The Deputy Attorney General of the United States, who's supposed to be an independent law enforcement, went to visit a convicted sex trafficker in prison for the purpose of protecting the president from potential testimony. Immediately after that visit, Maxwell got a sweetheart deal. He got transferred to a minimum security prison camp. He got special treatment even within that facility. Suddenly her cooperation with investigators dried up. Jamie Raskin described this as the only truly transparent part of the whole scandal, because we can see exactly what's happening. Maxwell gets subpoenaed, Blanche visits her to make sure she won't say anything damaging about Trump, and then she gets favorable treatment from the Justice Department. Quid pro quo. It's witness tampering, happening right out in the open. And here's what makes this even more corrupt. Blanche got rid of the career prosecutor handling the evidence. These were experienced attorneys who'd spent years working on sex trafficking cases, who knew the evidence inside and out, who had no political act grind. Blanche replaced them with own people. Trump loyalists could be trusted to prioritize protecting the president over pursuing justice for victims. This is where the institutional damage becomes really severe, as the career professionals at the Justice Department are watching this happen, realizing that their work doesn't matter. They're watching cases get sabotaged, watching evidence get buried. They're watching witnesses get special treatment in exchange for silence, realizing that the department has been completely corrupt. Some of them are trying to resist. Some of them are leaking information to Congress, talking to reporters, documenting the corruption so record when this eventually blows. But others are just, they're resigning, they're retiring early. They're taking jobs in the private sector, state-level prosecutors, because they can't in good conscience continue working for an institution that's been turned into a political protection racket. Dan Bonino, who was supposed to be the next FBI director before Trump picked Kash Patel instead, apparently looked at the situation and decided he wanted no part of it. Sources say he realized that working for this administration would require him to compromise integrity, to participate in cover-ups, to use federal law enforcement for political purposes. He decided he'd rather walk away than destroy his reputation. That's the choice facing every honest person who works in Trump's administration: participate in the corruption and hope for a pardon later, or refuse and face the consequences. And Trump has made it very clear that pardons are on the— he's been handing them out like candy. Raskin said, anyone who's willing to lie for Trump, obstruct justice for Trump, break the law for Trump, expect a pardon. This is how the leader creates a culture of impunity, where loyal followers know they won't face consequences for breaking the law. And that culture of impunity allows the leader to use state institutions for personal benefit. We're watching that system solidify in the States. The Epstein files scandal is just one example of how it— here's the thing about cover-ups: they almost never work, and the evidence is out there. Witnesses are still alive. American people are paying. Bondi can delete posts, old files. He can redact documents until readable. Can't make the truth disappear. Those photos of Trump with Epstein still exist. Flight logs still, witness testimony still exist. Eventually, one way or another, maybe it'll be through congressional investigations after Democrats 2020. Maybe it'll be through a federal judge ordering the release of materials. Maybe it'll be through whistleblowers who aren't silent anymore. Maybe it'll be through foreign intelligence services have their own copies of them and decide to leak them for their own geopolitical purposes. However it happens, truth is going to come out. Does Pam Bondi is going to face consequences. She's going to face impeachment proceedings, possibly criminal prosecution, definitely disbarment proceedings, Florida bar, and any other state bar. Her legal career is going to be over. Her reputation is going to be destroyed. She's going to spend years in legal jeopardy, all because she thought she could protect Donald Trump by breaking federal law. The same is true for Todd Blanche, Kash Patel, or every other Trump loyalist who's participating in the cover-up. Think they're being clever? Think they're protecting their political pay? They think they'll be rewarded with pardons and cushy jobs if they just keep the lid on everything. But they're wrong. Because presidential pardons don't protect you from state-level prosecutions, don't protect you from civil liability, don't protect you from disbarment proceedings, and don't restore your reputation once truth comes out. So here's the bottom line. We are watching a full-scale institutional crisis at the Department of Justice, and it's being driven by Pam Bondi's decision to put loyalty to Donald Trump above loyalty. She's violating federal statutes, she's obstructing justice, she's destroying evidence, she's doing it all in service of protecting the president from political embarrassment and legal exposure related to his Jeffrey Epstein. Congress is preparing to respond with oversight, impeachment proceedings, criminal referral. Democrats are unified, or no one, not even the attorney. Some Republicans are starting to realize that defending this level of corruption is politically suicidal. Heading into 2020, career professionals at the Justice Department watching their institution get dismantled from inside by political hacks don't care about justice. Story is far from over. Keep your eyes on the congressional investigations. Watch for what happens when Bondi is forced to testify under oath. Pay attention to whether any FBI agents, Justice Department prosecutors, whistleblowers, and stay alert for the inevitable moment when the full Epstein file leaks despite all the obstruction. Because they will leak, one way or another. When they do, we're going to find out exactly why Bondi was desperate to keep. This could reshape the balance of power between the executive branch and Congress. This could define Trump's second term, determine whether he serves out his full 4 years or faces impeachment. This could determine the outcome of the 2026 midterms, set the stage for 2020, and most importantly, finally deliver some measure of justice for Jeffrey Epstein victims who have been waiting for years to see powerful men held to crimes. Stay vigilant, stay informed, and don't let anyone tell you that this is just politics as usual, because it's not. This is a constitutional crisis. This is systematic corruption. This is the moment where we find out whether American democracy is strong enough to survive and openly defend